that's enough of that. Turn the amp all the way down, too. Howdy, folks. Oh, yeah, just playing with some stuff here. Not bad for an 80-watt passive, if I do say so myself. That's with the stock sub that came with the home theater in a box. 8-inch, 80-watt passive. Pathetic. But this place kind of doubles as an echoey wooden box. And what happens with cheap subs? Well, they basically are echoey wooden boxes. So, make the whole house my sub, darn it. Anywho, we've gathered here today, or should I say, I'm here today, because I screwed up the Great Sift. Just like that. Basically, what happened was I didn't make the trip out to the recycling place early in the morning like I wanted to, as I was up way too late making a video about part 1 of this stuff last night. It's one of those situations where you blink and it's midnight or something along those lines. I thought it was earlier in the evening than it actually was, and then I was like, oh shoot, can't screw up my sleep schedule too much. So I was up today, 6 o'clock sharp, with a couple hours of sleep, and that's it. Not like I need much sleep with the vacation and whatnot, but... So basically, I'm going to make the trip tomorrow. That's a definite, because the entire rest of the day, afternoon and evening, is devoted to the Great Sift. And well, there's a video and whatnot. So, we've already gone through a lot of the more noteworthy stuff, so I don't imagine there will be stuff that's really worth talking about the remainder of it. A couple of things here and there, but I could be jinxing myself. But basically what happened was, because I wanted to make a video about all of this, instead of just doing it, it took too long, had to edit lots of little clips getting edited together, doesn't work out very well. So all that time added up quite quickly, and then, yeah, so it took longer than it should have. I will get it right tonight, though, because you're not going to see part 2 until after this uploads, and I am not sacrificing my sleep and or my schedule in order to get part 2 done. You have part 1, because I want to get the Great Sift going at least, but part 2 will not be done until I can get it done without sacrificing sleep or what I want to do this week. So, you may see this as the last thing I upload for like a day or so until I can get part 2, the rest of it, the way it needs to be. I want to say a few words about sound systems, though. I was watching a few subwoofer channels this morning, folks with big truck systems and things like that, and basically my rivals in terms of audiophile type stuff. Of course, I prefer the speakers over there. I prefer the full range of stuff, including the mids and the highs. I don't just go for bass, bass, and more bass. Not trying to shake a block here, just my living room. But anyways, there have been some events that have taken place in the neighborhood in the last week or so. Some rap kids, I was saying earlier that some rap kids moved in that thought their Bluetooth woofer was cool. I don't think it's rap kids. I don't think it's like some like middle school kid who has like a secondhand speaker off of eBay and they're playing with my first system or whatnot. And they're, oh look, I can shake the block. And they don't refine it after that. It's not quite summer, but it's not quite spring either. It's early June. It's too early for it to be a high school kid that's out for summer break. However, there could be college kids home for the summer who brought their systems with them and think that they're still in the dorms. They can crank it up without people getting mad at them because in college everybody's still your age. So the problem is, this neighborhood has these neighborhoods have middle-aged and elderly folks too who aren't going to appreciate subwoofers at 6 in the morning. So, yeah, anyways, I'm not going to say anything to them unless they're doing off-hours type stuff, but I may use it as like a license to turn things up when it's appropriate. But I've done sound tests where I've walked around outside the house to see how far the bass was going, so I could shake the house, but not much else otherwise. So, unless you're standing around outside the house, you shouldn't be bothered by the bass. It's that simple. I mean, I don't even have a powered sub. It's a passive. Uses up 80 watts. 80 watts on the LFE channel, which is still less than what the Sats are getting. The Onkyo piece of junk home theater in a box receiver I've been using for the last couple of years has 100 watts max per channel for the Sats. So the sub being 80 watts passive is still not as loud as the Sats would be full blast. But wattage doesn't necessarily mean loudness. There have been some fluke systems before that have pulled off some serious decibels without distortion with lower wattages. At the time, the Klipsch Pro Medias that were such a flagship for so long were starting to come into their own. There was a French company, I think, called Audax or something like that. There was a type of speaker called the Sirocco Crossfire, and it was like less than 100 watts, but it was as loud as its Pro Media competitors. So it was really bringing into question the efficiency of the amplifiers. If you can get really loud sound with 80 watts versus hundreds, what's the point of these big amps? So I think there's more to the story than just what the max wattage is. I think the max wattage is like a selling point. At least, even when it's RMS. There have been some crap-ass speaker systems I've seen over the years that have the wattage in like peak or something, like PMPO or something like that, but it's not RMS. It's not sustained at those levels. Wattage doesn't mean loudness either. Wattage is simply power consumption. It's basically what you want something to do as well as heat generation, which is why it matters in computers, because if you can get something that does what you want for less wattage, not only does that lower the power bill a minor amount, but it's also less heat produced, less air conditioning you have to run in the summer, less noise from the fans spinning up to keep the processor at X degrees, things like that. So we'll deal with that when we get back to the more computery stuff at some point later on. I want to talk about why I'm not a big bass nut. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I've always traditionally, I play with bass every so often, and I was involved in a bass setup in college where myself and my roommate had basically hundreds of watts, I think over 1,000 if we really cranked everything, but we could have shook the whole floor if someone made us mad enough, which is saying something because dorms had like concrete walls and floors. It wasn't like wood that would be more like, turning your home into like a giant subwoofer box. It's not like that. So it took some effort to annoy your neighbors in college, but we could have done it. Problem is, he blew out the woofers in his speakers not long after he got there. He had his father's speakers from the 70s that he finished off. They were already foam rotting and killed him. He eventually had to go to an 80, a little 80-watt computer sub or something like that he threw in the closet for extra bass. So, oh man, we had some pretty interesting setups. But I play with bass every so often, but I'm not a bass nut. I don't have anything special in my car. And I don't have anything special here either. Ooh, passive sub. That's because all it has to do is represent the lower frequencies, the non-directional stuff below 80 Hertz. Simple enough. Now, the reason why I'm not a big bass nut is because I appreciate the actual rest of the frequency response. No, I know that speaker technology as it exists, speaker technology exists to recreate live events from elsewhere. So natural sound can be a lot more of a... anybody can throw a bunch of woofers in their truck and shake neighborhoods. But it really takes some finesse to make speakers that are so finely tuned that you sometimes can't figure out whether something's in your TV, show, video game, movie, or if it's really happening. That's how you know that you have a good system. When the sound it reproduces is so natural and so realistic across the entire frequency spectrum that you'll be watching a movie you haven't seen before, something will come out of the surrounds and you'll look because you think it actually happened. Or, in my case, as happens more often with me playing video games more than watching movies, I'll be playing a game and I'll hear a sound, like a siren or something, and I have to turn the sound down just to make sure, or watching a YouTube video even. I'll hear something on a YouTube video or in a video game that makes me turn down the sound to make sure it's just in the video and not in real life. So, like police sirens or ambulances or fire engines in a video versus actually happening out in the neighborhood. So, it's, right. When you have to turn down your system to verify that something's not part of what you're experiencing, that's when you know you have a good system. Shaking the neighborhood with bass is a gimmick. It's real easy, too. Get an amp, get a sub, start shaking. Rinse, lather, repeat. You can do all kinds of toying with bass to make it tighter bass response and not as boomy. And so, stuff like that, or you can crank up the volume and things like that. When I was in school, the folks I went to school with who had the big woofers in their trucks, they got to the point, one of them had a system where you couldn't swallow when the bass was going. So, in order to not end up not drooling or anything from all the bass, you had to turn everything down for a bit and, okay, there we go, swallow the saliva, turn the music back up. Stuff like that. But some of these competition systems that I'm seeing, there is one notable issue with all of that bass, and that would be your hearing. See, the problem with big bass, if you're not wearing ear protection, is that it's a silent killer. Our ears are not as sensitive to bass as they are to loud bass as they are to mid and higher stuff as well. So you could actually be damaging your ears pretty easily if you don't wear ear protection with those big systems. And of course, like, oh, I can turn it up and it shakes the place. Okay, are you above 85 decibels, which is where OSHA starts recommending if you're exposed to it on a regular basis, you start wearing ear protection? It's bad enough that even without big speakers, throughout the course of our lives, the high end of what we can hear is going to drop down. But bass is a silent killer because our ears aren't as sensitive. And we'll write it off as, well, I feel the bass instead of, but the thing is, the loud sound waves, if you're not wearing earplugs or anything, are still going into your ears just the same way that a mid or a high would. It just doesn't hurt as much. It's a silent killer. Ask anybody who's been in the military with, like, field... I mean, there was this guy, he visited my 9-to-5 once. He was having a hard time hearing me, and he said, oh yeah, I was field artillery for 5 years, around all kinds of booming cannons and stuff like... Not cannons, howitzers and stuff like that. Now, those things, when they make their big, loud booms, you know, cannons and howitzers and other stuff like that, that's not high-pitched, that's low. That's low booms and things like that. That's big firearms firing off. Or people that were in the Navy that were on ships and happened to be on deck when one of the big ship turrets fired. I mean, that's really loud, but it's not really high. It may not hurt as much as if it were mid-range or high-end, but it still hurts your ears. Just ask anybody who's been around, even, you know, a loud factory with a loud rumble day in and day out. May not be particularly ear-piercing, but it still can do damage over time. So that's what, you know, these kids with, I got a bunch of 12 inches in the back of my truck. This is the part of, this is where, you know, the bill comes due and you got to pay at some point later in life. This is the stupid stuff that sets you up for, I mean, if you got a system that's so loud that it's blowing, that your girlfriend's in there and it's blowing her hair all over the place, like she's standing in front of a giant wind tunnel, earplugs, at least. You know, you got to keep it below that 85 threshold. I actually went to a rock concert once, and that definitely damaged my hearing. I was hurting for 2 days afterwards from how loud the music was. I had a similar incident at our satellite building when they were testing the fire alarms, and they were a little too loud. I was actually hurting, my ears were hurting the next day from a fire drill that only happened for like 3 minutes in the middle of the day with fire alarms. So, loud sound is loud sound is loud sound. If you wouldn't tolerate a tweeter screeching in your ear at 140 decibels, don't tolerate a woofer rumbling in your ear at 140 decibels. I mean, if you want to feel the bass, fine, but the air that's going in your ears, do this, you know? Yeah, feel the bass more than hearing it. It's just that's the other side to that, and I don't want that. What I want is, at a comfortable volume level, that means not needing earplugs, all the frequencies involved in whatever I'm watching or listening to be properly and naturally represented. And that means not EQing the living hell out of the mids and the highs and the lows either. Like, if someone's talking, does that cause your subwoofer... In normal life, when you're talking to somebody, does human dialogue cause the walls to rattle from a ton of bass? No! So if you've got your subwoofer jacked up to where movie dialogue rattles your walls, something isn't right. That's not what that shouldn't be what you're looking at here. Movies already have dynamic range if you don't compress it, so loud can be loud and soft can be soft. So, but in the case of normal human speech, that should, you know, besides, if you can hear dialogue over a subwoofer, your system sucks anyways. You gotta tune it better, because subs are supposed to be non-directional rumbling and stuff, down at the low end of the scale. Human dialogue should never go over a subwoofer. Sadly, there have been some pricey systems, I think Bose Acoustimass even did it once, where the subwoofer was, bass module was so horribly tuned that you could make out dialogue over the bass module, subwoofer wannabe, whatever. So, it's something to think about. It's why I'm not a big bass nut. Yeah, sure, we've got some we got some college kids home for the summer that brought their systems home with them. I've been hearing some of it, what gets over here, but this is a house. They're living in a multifamily. If it's bothering me, I don't even want to know what their apartment neighbors through the wall think of them at this point. That's why I think the problem's going to solve itself, because if it's annoying me at any time during the day, if anybody's home in the adjacent units in the apartment place, they probably got people at least 10 times as mad at them for... yeah, right. Living in town is not the place to have a big system. You want to get away from it all so you can enjoy... you can enjoy your loudspeakers without having someone's granny coming up, "I'm trying to knit, turn down the bass," or something like that. The bass obsession, though, is just one of those gimmicks that people never seem to grow out of. Okay, your music you can feel your music. Okay, right. Can we move beyond that? 20 years later, oh, cool, you can feel your music. Yeah, anyways. Never mind having a realistic experience with your speakers where you can close your eyes and imagine yourself at the live show. Never mind having something that reproduces stuff that naturally that you can have. And by the way, concerts can be pretty loud, so you don't have to wear earplugs to enjoy a good live show. It might actually, we may have gotten to the point where studio engineers can make like live Blu-rays of a concert better than actually being at the show. Sound engineers can do all kinds of wonderful things these days. But if all you care about is, the bass shakes stuff off my shelves, then, well, yeah. So I'm not a bass nut. I play with it from time to time, but that's all it is, an occasional novelty. I don't really want to become hated bass freak numero uno on the block. I want to shake the house, and that's it. I don't want people across a wide thing of air whatnot to hear what's coming out of, unless I have the windows open, in which case set it up so that the windows that are open are not the ones where it will be like a direct pathway for the sound to go to the neighbors. You know, being considerate and stuff like that. But that's the thing. I did pick this place because I didn't want to have apartment neighbors, because they certainly caused me enough problems at the last place, but also to bring the subs out of retirement at a nice moderate volume without hopefully getting the cops called on me or something like that. But no, I'm not a bass nut. I want bass to be balanced with the rest of the frequencies when you're watching the movie. So normal discussion like this should not be going over a subwoofer and rumbling the floor. Even if somebody's way down here are going or something like that. It's just, there are issues with being a bass nut, like hearing issues, annoying people, things like that. It's yeah. I wonder if vibration can cause repetitive stress injuries or something later in life too. But you know, these military vets who are around the big ship guns and the big howitzers and stuff like that can't half hear anymore, that's not because of something screeching in their ear. That's basically, I mean, you talk about a competition-winning bass system doing 140 decibels. You don't want to be around that without something over your ears. You want to feel the bass? Fine, but make sure your ears are good to go first. If that's even possible, considering you feel bass more than you hear it. But that's just a side effect of how our ears work. But when you get to the point where you're constantly, what, and stuff like that, because you can't hear anything because you rattled your eardrums to pieces, well, that's not going to be me. And it's like, there was an old Sony thing that I heard there was an old Sony instruction manual for a headset that I had back in the 90s that said, make sure you don't crank the volume really high. We want you listening for a long time. Indeed. So, that's why I'm not a big bass nut. I picked up these bookshelves specifically so I could have a little bit of bass in the evening without disturbing the neighbors. So, but even then, I have 2 socks that I never wear. They don't even match. These things will fit right in the ports to shut them up even more in the evenings. Go from port to sealed. So, to shut these bookshelves up in the evenings, but I think even then they're still a little on the boomy side. But that's really the thing. Have the frequencies properly represented, even the low ones, but not to the extent that the low ones drown everything out. That's what good sound is. Have a system where I have to turn the volume down to verify, yeah, that's in the game, in the movie, on the YouTube video, not actually happening outside or something. So, fun stuff. But that's why I'm not a big bass nut. Now, I have to go out and get some exercise, go for a walk to a supermarket that's within walking distance. Yay, cool, the perks of living in town instead of completely, totally out in the woods. But I want to go pick up a few groceries here and there, and then we can resume the Great Sift. There will be more time spent on the Great Sift today than there was yesterday. Yesterday I had Star Wars, I had chores and things like that. So that I started too late, and that's why I didn't have what I wanted this morning. So, we fixed that this afternoon. Let's get to it. This is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.